Cole County judge has ruled today that a petition to add a 14th casino in Missouri did not get enough signatures.
In November, Missourians will now decide whether a new casino can be built in the state. WGEM Missouri Capitol reporter Hannah Falcon breaks down the ballot question for us.
A group trying to build a casino in Missouri is feeling lucky now that a judge ruled in their favor Friday.
We were confident the whole time.
The Secretary of State's office previously denied a petition to add a 14th casino license in Missouri, saying they were over 2,000 required signatures short to make the ballot. A group wanting to build an Osage River Casino at the Lake of the Ozarks filed suit. Today, the Secretary of State's office conceded in front of a Cole County judge that a mistake was made, and the petition did get enough signatures.
Now, we don't think they were up to anything nefarious. We think that just the clock ran out on them. And we're gratified that the system works. We're gratified that the court understood it. And we're really excited to be able to take our message to the voters in November.
Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft was unavailable for an interview following the ruling. But his office tells me the office and local election authorities initially thought there were not enough signatures, but a court challenge proved otherwise. In an interview with me earlier this week, Ashcroft said lawsuits over ballot questions are not uncommon. In fact, it's all part of the process.
This is really typical. People go through the initiative petition process. If they're successful, then someone else sues them to stop it. If they're not successful, then they sue to try to find some way on the ballot.
Just getting their petition on the ballot isn't enough, though. Now Missouri voters must decide whether to allow another casino. If passed, it would amend the Missouri Constitution to allow for a casino along the Osage River. Currently, casinos are only allowed on the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. It would also change state law to allow for 14 casino licenses, one more than currently permitted. This potential casino is expected to add to Missouri's economy. The petition says it would add 700 jobs to the lake area and millions to the local economy. Reporting in Jefferson City, I'm Hannah Falcon, WGEM News.